Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our first Risk and Assurance Committee meeting of this year and of this term. Grayson, we're all good with the live streaming, good to go, excellent. So we'll start off, for those who wish to with the Council Karakia, please. Thank you, everybody. So welcome to the committee, elected members and our independent members, staff. I'm joined up here with Alice, who's going to keep us on track and give me an occasional kick to make sure that I'm following the agenda. And Monica's our reporting officer, and we'll obviously be joined with staff across various agenda items. So I might be a bit rusty as chair today, so if we make some mistakes, just bear with us. As I say, Alice will try and keep us on track. We have 3 new elected members onto this committee, and we're joined by Jenny and Sarah, our independent members. Thank you for coming back and being with us. But because we are a new committee, we're going to find our way, and so there's no dumb questions. There's no, we're going to be learning on the job, learning as we go. And so, if you've got any questions about the subject matter or the process, feel free to ask that question and chime in with your views. Before I get into the agenda, I guess I wanted to just talk about how I'd like this committee to operate for this term. You've got the terms of reference, so hopefully you understand the focus and the scope of this committee. And I guess just to emphasise that the purpose of this committee is not to run those operational conversations, it's not to second guess management, and we're not simply here just to receive and rubber stamp reports. Our role is very much governance level assurance and asking those really important questions because this committee has a really important role around ensuring that we're focused on the right risk framework and the right risk, that we have control systems, frameworks, and that they're operating as intended, that we have the finance, compliance and governance settings that align to those and manage those risks. So I guess this committee, to emphasise, this committee does have a really, really important assurance role, and so I really welcome and encourage your active participation, and if you have any questions, please ask them. We've got the expertise of obviously our staff and our independent members to help us guide us, and they're very good at making me not look dumb. So feel free to ask those questions. What I'm going to do now is we will go through some of the procedural items. So I haven't received any apology from Councillor Young, so we'll move over that. There are no late items. Are there any declarations of interest? I suspect unlikely, but no. Excellent. What I'm going to do then is move that we receive all of the reports in the agenda, so that's items 5.1 to 5.7. I'll move that. If I can have a seconder for that, seconded by Councillor Gray. All in favour? Any against? No, excellent. All right, well, with that, we will move to item 5.1, and I'll invite Tanya and I think it's Ashley to the table. So this is our Health and Safety Wellbeing Quarterly Report for October to December 2025. I'll get Tanya to introduce the report in a second. I did just forget to acknowledge that we have 2 members in the public gallery. We're very excited to have someone actually come along and watch one of our meetings, so thank you for being with us. And with that, over to you, Tanya, to introduce the report.
Thank you. Morena tātou. Thank you, Chair, committee members, for the opportunity to provide an update on the Health, Safety and Wellbeing dashboard for the quarter of October to December 2025. As this is the first RAC meeting of the new triennium, we've included a brief explanation of the dashboard scoring to help with reading the report and understanding the insights it provides. I'd like to share a couple of highlights from the report. Turning to the leadership section, page 10, the data shows strong engagement from both leaders and officers across the quarter, which reflects a positive involvement right across our organisation. We're also seeing continued improvement in the audit completion area as Kaimahi grow in confidence completing audits within their work areas, supported by their health and safety representatives. On page 11, the health and safety inductions continue to be completed for all new staff. This supports their understanding of health, safety and well-being. That's part of our everyday mahi, and includes practical information for them as in where to find policies, documentation, and what to do in emergency situations across our council work areas. And finally, in the 13-month incident trends on page 13, this gives a really good snapshot of Council's positive reporting culture. Kaimahi are actively using the reporting system, which helps ensure that incidents are visible, they're responded to, and are used as opportunities to review and continually improve our environment. I'll take the report as read, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much, Tanya. So, committee, this is our first item for the first term. Has anyone got any questions or areas they'd like to focus in on or discuss? Councillor Bowler.
Thank you. Going back to page 10, I just wanted clarification because I thought it made sense. The unfortunate to see a -5, I'm assuming that's A, holidays, and B, the fact there's no training in that particular quarter. So you have the health and safety index drop -5, and I'm assuming, just looking at the lovely graphs, because it was really great reading, really appreciate all the work that's on this dashboard. I just wanted to, that my understanding was correct, that when we don't do any training, it will skew the results slightly.
If you could just start again, sorry, Tanya, just so we can capture on the live stream.
The -5 in that section on page 10, leadership, is because we have a 2-week period where we require our reports to be reviewed, and one of 2 areas did not get completed in the 2 weeks, but they have been completed. That dropped the data.
Any further questions or comments? Mayor Bernie.
Tanya, just noting the comment you made about the increase in trend in terms of threatening behaviour and things like that. Are we noticing any trends in terms? Are we keeping any data in terms of the types of threatening behaviour, or are we just clumping it all together so we've got this? Because it's disturbing. I'm hearing from a number of other places as well that this is an ongoing trend right through the country in a lot of ways at the moment, which is really troubling. And I just wonder, how do we combat it? How do we do something about it?
So thank you for your question. So in relation to our data, we report it in a lump in terms of threatening behaviour, but in the raw data it is specified down to where that may be, so whether that has come through online, face-to-face, and then within which facility. So from a trend point of view, we can identify and say, okay, we're getting a lot of face-to-face, or we're seeing quite a bit come through social media, so then we can put our mitigations in place in that space that specifically needs it. So not in this report, but in terms of our raw data that comes through, yes, we can see that.
Thank you for that, Ashley. Carrying on further to that, does your raw data also allow you to maybe look at what the issue is, whether it's a common issue?
Absolutely, yeah. So when we look at the trends, we complete a bow tie analysis to see where those pressure points are and where we can change our process to try and mitigate that from happening. At times, we might be doing everything we can, and we then look at the process, it appears to be working, and then we might need to look from a public lens in and go, okay, well, how are we then doing that?
Any further questions, comments from the side of the table? Remember, Jenny.
Just a comment, this is really good quality reporting. It's great to see the ongoing trend over time that we've seen over the last few years of improvement. And just well done and great work. And it's great to see the engagement with your leadership team and so on. So well done.
Any further questions, comments over the side? I've just got 2 lines of inquiry, if that's all right. Just in the report and in your response to Councillor Fox, you talked about that there were just a couple of incidents that weren't reviewed within the time that we set as a target. Can you just talk about, is that just a sort of a temporary blip, staff blip, people blip, rather than a systems, can you just speak to that?
Thank you for your question. Yes, Chair, it is. These 2 particular ones were just, one was the review took more time to gather the information that we required to complete a review, and the other was just, I think, our staff, if I remember right with my notes, a staff backup of people completing the review. So nothing that concerned us. We do monitor that, and if I need to step in to complete a review, I can do that, but I prefer the people involved to be able to complete that system.
Thank you for that assurance. And then just the last one I'd like to just focus in on is on the E-roads data. And again, just in terms of the trend and the numbers there, in terms of those overspeed events, are we sort of, I don't want to use the word comfortable, but I'm going to use the word comfortable because I can't think of a better word. Are we comfortable that that's kind of consistent with what we'd see in other organisations, or are we consistent with what happens? Because I guess I would then want to ask sort of about what do we do about repeat instances? Like, are these sort of one-offs, or are these, is there something that sits under this data around sort of repeat incidents?
The E-roads data is a space where we are continually having a focus around how we can monitor and manage that. The trends over time, you'll see, so there has been additional vehicles around local waters that have come into place, so there are more people out on the road driving than we've previously had. Whether or not we're comfortable, ideally that our reporting is trending downwards. We're not currently in that space, but we are looking at how we can support and engage with Kaimahi around getting those overspeeds down, specifically in that 0 to 10k over.
Just through you, Mr. Chair, further to that, just to give the committee assurance that we have adequate internal policies in place around where there are repeat instances, understanding the why, and if the why is linked to actually the performance of someone, that's when our HR processes support us in working through that.
Thank you very much. All right, final opportunity for the table. Any questions, comments, feedback? I want to thank you guys for the quality of the report, as always. It just continues to get better and better. We appreciate your presentation and all the information. Thank you. All right, we'll move then on to item 5.2, and I'd like to welcome, I think that's Catherine and Ashley. So we have item 5.2, Risk Management Quarterly Report, and this is a very important paper for us today with the presentation of the Risk Management Framework, hopefully for endorsement. But over to you, Catherine and Ashley.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everyone. So my report today has provided a high-level update on where we're at with risk management and the next phase of where our work is heading. Overall, the focus of the report has been on strengthening Council's risk maturity, improving clarity for decision making, and ensuring our approach remains practical and fit for purpose. So the key piece of work has been a refresh of the risk management framework and policy, for which we are seeking your endorsement. The framework has not been a full overhaul, but rather a targeted refresh. So it's been a targeted refresh of key elements to improve our consistency and to better reflect how risk is managed across the organisation. The framework and policy have been deliberately designed to be concise and usable, with a strong focus on supporting both strategic and operational decision making. As you will see, risk appetite is also proposed as the next phase of work this year, to be developed in partnership with elected members and the executive leadership team. This will provide clearer guidance for decision making. We're also planning a change on how top risks are defined and reported to the Risk and Assurance Committee. We want to see the top risks set on an annual basis and focused on the most critical high-level risks, including broader and external issues that could materially impact Council's objectives and community outcomes. Our risk appetite will be clearly reflected in the top risks. For each top risk, we want to be explicit about where Council is prepared to accept risk and where Council is not. As a result, reporting to the committee will also change. It will be less focused on routine status updates like we've done in the past, and more focused on meaningful insight. So the reporting will be designed to prompt discussion, support deeper considerations of emerging risks and issues, and allow for targeted deep dives where needed. So the reporting will be focused on what is changing, what matters most, and where we need to have deeper discussions. This does mean that not every top risk will be reported at each Risk and Assurance Committee meeting, only where there is something material to add that quarter. So overall, the work underway is about lifting our risk maturity in a practical way, strengthening governance, and ensuring risk management meaningfully supports Council's strategic direction. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Catherine, and yeah, look, just again, thanks to you and actually for all of the hard work in the space. There's been really significant progress, and it feels really, really good in terms of where we're currently positioned. Before I open up to questions, comments, I wonder if it would just be useful if you could just perhaps speak to, if this framework is endorsed and then Council also then adopts it, what's the practical, what can this committee, how are we going to use this as a tool? So both this committee and then Council, so thinking about in the context of the long-term plan or Council decision making, what tangible impact is the framework going to have? Could you, sorry, I put you on the spot a little bit, but if you can just kind of give what does this look like in practice?
Thank you for your question. So once the framework, if it is endorsed and we work through the appetite piece, which is then saying from a Council point of view, this is where your appetite sits for certain specific spaces, we can then roll that through to internal processes, which we aim to then see through in reporting to help from a decision-making point of view and to help officers assess where your level of risk sits on specific areas. We can also then see that come through to support the long-term plan discussion and understand as a table on that specific year, because we're looking at doing appetite on a yearly basis, to assist that process in setting that long-term plan.
So, if I've understood things correctly, risk and assurance from a reporting perspective, we will continue to see quarterly reports. From a council perspective, council will receive risk reporting through the organisational performance report, but then annually there'll be a list of top risks that are kind of aligned to that risk appetite statement that then will further drive and help with the decision making. So that's kind of how the pieces fit together. Have I understood that? Yeah. Correct. With that, I will open up for questions, comments from the table. Anyone got any feedback or questions? Member Sarah.
Thank you. So look, first of all, this is a great step forward. I can see that you're being a lot more concise with the reporting that you're going to be doing. I like that you've got your risk appetite tolerance as the basis for a lot of it as well, and identifying where things are incidents as opposed to specific risks is great to see. Just a couple of things maybe to consider in your reporting or what you're doing going through, and apologies if I've missed it in what you've done. There was quite a bit in there, but do consider ownership of the top risks and the reporting to reflect in the risk using sort of a RAG status, sometimes just doing a dashboard of the key risks, and you were talking about you'll only be reporting where the movements are. It's then useful to see where it is in terms of just arrows up, arrows down, those sorts of things as well, but I think it's really good to have that. Also look at forecast risks, where you think you might be able to take it. I know we always look at inherent and residual risks, but see where you think, because some things we can't, we just have to accept and try and manage. And then, I don't know, through you, Chair, is perhaps maybe doing a deep dive on some specific key risks on a more regular basis, just to sort of keep those front and centre for us as in council as well, so that you can address those. But happy.
Thank you very much for that feedback, Member Sarah. That's exactly the conversation that Ashley and I had this morning around understanding how we're going to use that top risk reporting and then the risk appetite as a basis to drill into some of those risks through further deep dives. And so I'd really love when we come to talk about the work program under 5.7, we might discuss where we'd like to perhaps concentrate some early effort to perhaps guide the team on what we'd like to see first up. So thank you very much.
If I could just add one other thing too that I thought about when I was coming here today is, particularly with new members, is to actually even have some headings to assist them with how to think about those key strategic risks as well. A lot of people don't necessarily consider reputational risk, for instance, so it's really good if they've got a few pointers. It's not a definitive list, and it should never be, but sometimes it's quite helpful, and it points them more to a strategic as opposed to an operational risk.
Thank you.
Councillor Nola.
Building on what Sarah had commented was what triggered one of my interests was the issue that the top risks are reviewed annually, and it was the wording of that is there thought to add in a little bit more flexibility with the words or sooner if needed, something like that, just to provide you that flexibility to make it a more effective working policy or framework?
Absolutely. We can take those comments on board.
I think I'm seeing nods that that's a good move. Thank you, team.
Yeah, there was a question I was going to raise, because trends and risks often occur over time. They don't happen just systematically at an annual time. The other question, one thing I'm really encouraged by is the CSView systems compliance. I think the fact that we're using that sort of system gives me confidence that we are really attempting to ensure that we are managing those risks. The other question I had was this, and this might be one of those dumb questions the chair referred to earlier, but the difference between the top risks and strategic risks seem to me to be sometimes the same thing. And I just wondered, could you just expand on that a little bit more in terms of what you actually mean by that?
Yes, so we do have top risks and we do have strategic risks. The top risks are pulled sort of out of our strategic risks, but they are our very high level top risks for council rather than getting down into the smaller strategic risks. Yeah, so one of the examples we've got is financial. So for me, I see financial stability of council is a top risk, and in the register we've got some smaller strategic risks such as the affordability of rates for our communities. We've got increasing costs across the board for council such as utilities, insurances. So while they're two of our sort of smaller strategic risks, overarching that is basically our financial stability. For me, that would be our top risk.
I'm sure there'll be further discussions when we get into discussing the framework anyway.
You just raised the CS view topic, and I just thought it would be useful if we could just turn to, so it's paragraph 32, and so you'll see the report there talks about a progress update on the local waters resource consent compliance, and this was a piece of work that this committee requested at a meeting last year. I don't know if you just want to talk really high level to kind of where we're going to hopefully end up, but where we're at the moment, because obviously this provides an update on terms of the software that we're using, but if you could just speak to where we're hoping to end up.
Thank you for your question.
We're gonna get Dan to answer that one.
Yeah, we're all a fan of Excel spreadsheets, however, with several thousand consent conditions when it comes to the day-to-day monthly compliance and monitoring, but also for reporting through to elected members, we have decided to move towards a software system. Is used by a number of other councils, including within the new water service organisation region with Rangitike. That'll effectively provide a tool where we'll have a dashboard for daily operations, monitoring, tracking, reporting through to horizons, but also be able to provide that view through to elected members. So we can expect to have that in place in the coming months.
So Dan, is it fair to say that this piece of work is useful from a compliance perspective, but also it will assist as part of the transition of with Central Waters District in terms of because some of those consents are going to naturally follow the assets and novation of agreements, that kind of thing. Is that, have I understood that correct?
Yes, that's correct. We are also dealing with a couple of live compliance issues around the Tokomaru wastewater treatment plant and also the pot around historic compliance issues. So that is something that will be helpful to provide that dashboard and a more fulsome update.
Thank you. All right. Is there any further questions on that particular aspect or topic? No. In terms of the framework, did I have any further comments, questions, feedback, anything that you're worried about that you want to focus in on? No, there seems to be a high level of comfort. So, Mayor Burney, did you have anything further you wanted to discuss on the framework, or are you comfortable?
Probably the only thing I'd be keen to understand what does that look like going forward now for us in terms of understanding, how we're going to develop the framework and those risks and stuff, I suppose, over the next 6 months or so, whatever that looks like.
Yes, so over the next 6 months, well, hopefully not quite 6 months, we're going to be concentrating on putting our top risks together, and we're also going to be working on our risk appetite with you all, and that will be starting off next month. We will be sending out some information on risk appetite to start to get you all to thinking about what risk appetite is, where you potentially want to see it going at council, and then we'll come together in some workshops and start having some discussions.
Just to add to that piece, that will be with full council, not just this committee.
All right. No final comments, questions. With that, then I will turn us to page 25 of your agendas, and I will move recommendation B, that the Risk and Assurance Committee endorse the risk management framework and policy as key components in leading effective risk management across the organisation, and recommend to council for adoption. If I could have a seconder, I'll take Councillor Nola. All in favour? Any against? Fantastic. Thank you, Ashley, and thank you, Catherine, for that one. We will now then move to item 5.3, which is our financial dashboard, and we're going to be joined at the table by Steve and Jacinta. Welcome back, Jacinta. Good to see you. And I think, so this is our 5.3 financial dashboard as at 31 December 2026. Just while Steve and Jacinta get settled, this is a dashboard that the Risk and Assurance Committee last term requested the team to put together, and it's been refined and contains a number of very useful indicators. That said, if there is particular expectations or needs from the new committee, I'm sure the team would love to get that feedback, and we can see what we can do. With that, hand over to you. Thank you, Steve.
Good morning, Chair, Mayor Burney, committee members, and Malik. Thank you for the opportunity to present this paper. Through the Chair to Member Jenny, we've had some constructive feedback from on the paper about some further analysis that we could add to the paper. So it's been really quite good, so we will endeavour to make sure that is added going forward. I will take the paper as read. Is there any questions?
Steve, I might just get you to pull your microphone just slightly bit closer to you, just a little bit quiet. But questions, comments, Member Jenny.
Yeah, let me quickly sort of talk to that piece around analysis. I suppose it's a great dashboard, really like it. It's got some really good quality information for us, and great to see this transparency around the financial results there. I suppose for me, the way I'm reading it, and tell me if I'm misinterpreting stuff, please. There's a few that are kind of red rags to me, or red traffic lights or whatever, concerning, just to mention a couple, I suppose the key ones, that graph on the bottom left-hand corner around the operating surplus deficit position. I suppose the trend over the long term there, we've seen much bigger deficits than what's been budgeted. So, basically, much bigger spend than what's been budgeted, so negative there. Development contributions in the current year, we're way under year-to-date compared to where we've budgeted. The overdue debtors piece, that rate arrears, is really jumping up and sort of sitting at double what it was a few years ago. So that looks like a real trend that's happening over time. And the debt to revenue ratio is always one that I'm really concerned about. And if you look at the LGFA stats on the next page, Horowhenua is kind of right up there in the ones that are the highest, apart from Queenstown and Tauranga. So, it is challenging financial times and so on. So I suppose when I'm reading this and thinking also about the government's reform program and rates capping context, the report doesn't sort of tell me, the so what are we doing about it, how are we managing the financial risks, and it probably links into that previous conversation about potential deep dives around financial stability or sustainability, whatever we want to call it. But I suppose when I read this, and I don't know, and obviously I don't read all the other papers, and I'm not across all the other conversations and decisions that are being made, I can't get a sense of what are you doing about these areas that are issues or problems, and I'm sure you've got some great plans, but it'd be good to be able to read this paper and go, okay, there's some analysis, some setting of the scene as to how you're addressing and managing those risks. And it may be that you just need to do it briefly in this quarterly report, and we do some other deep dive as well. Thank you.
So thank you, Member Jenny. So I think we've kind of got two pieces to that, which is a sort of a process. What do we do from here in terms of the reporting and expectations around that? But then the second is perhaps just responding to the perhaps now where we can, giving a bit of a response to those four particular areas that Member Jenny has identified. Are you happy to do that?
Thanks, through you, Mr. Chair. Absolutely. So, very good point, Jenny, in terms of having that explanation to give the context in terms of the conversation. For us, I guess, in terms of your question around the debt, absolutely, it continues to be a significant challenge for us and one that we are managing carefully through the long-term plan and the annual plan process. We're still on track in terms of reaching the balanced budget benchmark for the 27-28 financial year in terms of the financial strategy. So that means then we will be at a point where we are fully funding depreciation and fully funding our operating costs. So that is tracking along well, but it doesn't take away from the fact that it is absolutely still a challenge and one we're acutely aware of and forms part of all the operational and planning conversations. In relation to the operating deficit, yes, we still have one. Some of that is there from we still have debt-funded operating costs, both for the Three Waters project, but also for some of our software investment that's happening over the next little while. Underneath that, and that is absolutely something we should mention more in this report, it's a good point, is we are on track from an OPR reporting perspective, a quarterly report perspective, to achieve a $1 million savings target for this financial year. Once we take out software and Three Waters costs, we are tracking well in terms of still meeting some savings targets to perform better than we anticipated. And then in terms of the annual plan process and the document in terms of a draft annual plan document that we've just signed off, bringing that rates increase down from in the 11s down to 5.8. And that has been through good contract negotiation and finding savings, not necessarily through cutting things, but through service levels, some service levels, but heaps of efficiency gains and good contract management has helped us to get to that position. I think lastly is around the debtors. That is a challenge, absolutely, and you can see there it's clear that we are facing some challenges, particularly in relation to the outstanding rates debt. We're focused on that. And particularly in relation to the water area, now that we're fully metered, that is a challenge that we're actively managing. One thing we are particularly focused on in the last sort of few months of last quarter is getting help from Debt Management Central to structure and around that waters debt and make sure that we can start to bring that down. So the waters one is the one we probably need to focus on the most and is the one we've kicked into gear with Debt Management Central some more.
CEO Monique?
Really good feedback, Member Jenny, and I think that what would be helpful in the future is we just make sure we link the OPR, which is our full organisation performance report, because it will provide a bit more of the context. For example, take the property rates arrears. That's one that council have asked for more detailed information about what's contributing to that and what does it actually look like in terms of the age of the debtors. So I think there's possibly some improvements we can make to the dashboard. I'm looking at the operating surplus deficit bit, and I think it tells an unfair story about operating costs versus overall and compared to underlying position, because that tells a picture that we spent more than we had, which is not true in terms of operational costs. It's in the context of how depreciation and particularly impact of revaluation of assets has had on our books over the last couple of years. But I think what is really helpful that's come out of this is the so what piece, and I think a deep dive, Mr. Chair, on that analysis is helpful, but I think we can also take on board the how do we demonstrate kind of green, orange, red on each of the reporting metrics, and where it is a red, that on the second page we provide some further analysis around, well, what are we doing to manage that risk, and is that enough? Because particularly around the property rates arrears, like we're doing some stuff, but it's a little bit like your comment earlier, member Sarah, around the forecast risk and actually being clear that we're not going to solve that whole problem of the fact that right now we have that much debt owed to us by ratepayers, because some of the reasons that ratepayers aren't paying council are not things that we can solve just by ourselves. There's a more kind of a global issue around affordability of rates and the funding and financing crisis of local government. But to name that, I hear you. That's important.
Do you have any
Thank
further?
you. That's really helpful. And just one other thing to consider in your annual plan process is just that sort of risk of optimism bias. You know, that we're hopeful about some of these forecasts, particularly in the rates capping context, that you're building in a bit of contingency risk management, that you're not cutting it too tight. Just that's all. Thank you. But otherwise, really happy with the response. Thank you.
Any further? Looks like Member Sarah.
Just to Jenny's point on that optimism, sometimes it's quite useful to look at sensitivities around it, major problems that could occur, and you kind of then get back to what would the norm be. You kind of reduce that optimism side of it as well.
And we have real life examples of that. You know, we've had a weather event over New Year's that, as of today's, cost us $250,000 that is not budgeted for, and that puts real life pressure on our operational costs. That you all know what I might say about what that looks like in a rates capping environment. But even without a rates capping environment, when we're trying to manage the very real pressure of a zero-based budgeting process, it doesn't take much to kind of trigger the sensitivity.
Me, Bernie.
And just following off from that, I am always conscious of what audit and other people play in terms of us being either optimistic or pessimistic in terms of our, they'll tell us, and credit rating agencies will tell us very quickly if we're not being positive enough, or we're being too negative, and so they play a pretty key role. My question, though, was actually around the rates remission, which is amount which is 100,000 over what we've budgeted for, but which says that we're going to be funded from additional rates income. Yet we've got a higher rates debtors amount, and I just wondered, how does that correlate? Because it seems we're adding, where is that extra rates additional money coming from?
Through you, Mr. Chair, just to confirm, that is in the rates remission area. We have one remission that relates to council utilities, and so because of the valuation of those utilities, the rates ended up being higher, so we need to remit more. But from a cash perspective, there's no impact. It's the council portion of it, not other. We're absolutely on track in terms of the other remissions. It's just that one portion.
Any further questions or comments on the financial dashboard? Councillor Noel.
Thanks for that. So, taking that a bit further from a point of view of making the dashboard easy to read, is there, without a horrendous amount of work, the ability to have some way of showing what's actually a cash issue versus what you've just explained as being a council portion, so it actually doesn't give a false picture? Because I hear what Bernie says. It looks like, where you're going to get 100,000 from, where in actual fact that's actually in the books. It's not actual physical cash. But that might be the too hard basket.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think we can definitely do something in terms of the wording within that area as well to make sure that it's clear for everybody. I think we can clarify that, absolutely.
Any further questions, comments? No, that looks. Like to thank you for dashboard. I think you're with us for the next item, then we will move on to item 5.4, which is our sensitive expenditure report to 31 December 2025. Over to you to present the report.
Through you, Chair. Also, a pleasure in presenting this report, sensitive expenditure report. I think it's read, and I can assure the committee that with all sensitive expenditure, the appropriate actions have been taken and have been satisfactorily satisfied. Is there any questions? You're going to get sick of hearing from me. Through the Chair, pleasure in presenting the Treasury update. Draw your attention to the attachments from Bancourt, and can confirm that all our covenants, etc., have been satisfied, remain to be satisfied, continue is the appropriate word, to be satisfied. Is there any questions?
Any questions or comments on that one? It looks like member Jenny's got a burning question.
Thanks, Steve. And paragraph 4 references pre-funding of $43 million, which seems quite a lot of pre-funding, particularly $14 million for the next financial year. And I'm just wondering what the reasoning is for that, and also if it's within policy.
Through Mr. Chair, so the majority of the funding relates to satisfying the debt that's coming due this financial year. We continue along in terms of the approach with Standard & Poor's or S&P. They, from a points perspective, through all the conversations that we have with them, they still do look favourably on us in terms of making sure that we're pre-funding any debt that's coming due in the next financial year from a liquidity risk perspective. So we are continuing to do that, and that is in accordance with the approach from a Treasury management policy perspective.
Member Jenny, because on paper, as a financial dummy, I kind of thought, that 2/3, 1/3 split felt okay and felt like it was kind of managing risk. But did you have a view on or additional sort of feedback for us on that?
Yeah, I suppose with the local government funding agency, we've got easy access to cash and liquidity. So you've got to try and balance up, sort of meeting Standard & Poor's expectations and also just be financially sensible. So yeah, I think your policy compliance piece, your policies should set the direction as long as you're compliant with that. And obviously there's a judgment call there around the timing, but I suppose what we don't want to see is excessively high forward pre-funding happening too early. Yeah.
Did you want to?
Thanks, through Mr. Chair. Yeah, absolutely. Hear what you're saying. It is a balance, and we often have this conversation with S&P about where that balance best sits. So, from a policy perspective, we would only pre-fund for that next year in advance.
Can I just ask both of you? Will our approach around this likely change in a post Three Waters context, because our debt profile becomes a lot more, I won't say certain, but yeah, what does it look like in 18 months' time when we start to
Yeah, I think it's a good question. You really need to be thinking ahead about the impacts of water reform. We've seen some recent announcements from the local government funding agency where they are making it much easier to just novate debt from one entity to the next. That's very recent, like in the last few weeks. Before then, there's been a lot of uncertainty as to how it happens. So I suppose that forward planning and thinking about, your Treasury strategy and the approach in the context of water reform is important, and managing the risks across that. And there's big financial consequences around interest costs and so on. So those are my first thoughts on that query.
Through you, Mr. Chair, and just for context for this committee in terms of our approach, So the Treasury management side of Central District's water, we've been working closely with PwC around that. Tomorrow, actually, at the end of today or tomorrow, we're expecting the first draft report in terms of treasure options, in terms of what that looks like for the three councils and the way that we're going to novate or otherwise the debt into the new financial entity. So that will be a process that will be discussed with each council individually and then with the board when they come on. So absolutely that works close to being in its first draft form. The three councils, we've been working closely on options with PwC and that's coming along well. Once that first paper is done, then we'll be in a good position to have more detailed conversations with each of the councils as well.
And then further to that, kind of acknowledging that where council are then going to need to do a whole lot of heavy lifting is in the long-term plan, because our financial strategy is going to need to look very different to what our current financial strategy looks like, which is where our investment policy, our treasury management policy, will need a complete rethink, because A, our risk profile looks different, B, our asset base looks very different, and while we'll still hold debt, the approach to how we manage that debt will be in a different context, because even our certainty around revenue changes in the context of all of those reform programs ahead of us.
So can you just paint for the committee and the hundreds of people watching the live stream the picture of what does that look like in practice? So in terms of the financial strategy that's addressed through the long-term plan process, which would be signed off in May, June next year, but then in terms of the piece that member Jenny talked about in terms of the treasury strategy, that follows the financial strategy being set. So can you just paint a picture in terms of what this looks like in terms of a work program or sort of a rough timeline?
So I think it's important to think about it in the context of the two different sides of the ledger. So there's the council and its negotiation and transition of its assets to Central District's water, and that is real live stuff that council can anticipate in the next few months as we start to negotiate terms of transfer, acknowledging that the official transfer and official establishment of CDW is 1 July 27, aligned with our long-term plan. The other side of the ledger is then, okay, and so what's left, and what is the new shape of the both infrastructure and financial strategy for the organisation. That is work that essentially between May and December of this year that council will be putting its energy into. So off the back of a piece of work which council are anticipating about building a roadmap for how we're going to navigate the multiple reform components, in particular rates capping, council can anticipate financial guidance and modelling on the different options, but the intent is all of this is to inform policy-based conversations around strategy setting for financials and then the policy settings that flow from that.
That's given me a very good picture, thank you.
But it's this side of Christmas, not next Christmas.
And maybe just if I can bring some of my experience with what's happening in Wellington and Te Aki Wai, it's going live 1st of July 2026. So what we're seeing with the different councils is that Treasury compliance and sort of maturities of debt and so on, there's a whole lot of issues popping up while you're working through kind of what you think the future is going to be versus what it is right now, and there's breaches happening around policy. So I think it's probably maybe by the end of this year when you've got a better position as to what you think, what you know about the future projections. This committee getting assurance around understanding where you're at, what are the risks around that Treasury forecasts, and basically endorsing any non-compliance, sort of understanding what that non-compliance looks like in terms of Treasury policy, and no surprises approach, that you kind of understand there's a lot of uncertainty and things will move and there may be some Treasury calls that need to be made in that context, and it's okay to kind of breach compliance, possibly not. So it's a piece that this commission just get across from the Treasury perspective. That makes sense.
That is very, very helpful. And so we'll just talk about that in a little bit more detail when we come to do the work programming. We'll have that conversation. Jacinta and Steve, do you have anything further you wanted?
Sorry, just quickly through you, Mr. Absolutely, Jenny, it's a great point. And through the analysis work that we'll have from PwC, would be in a position for each of the councils to be able to present that work or understand what that's going to look like in the next couple of months. While the decisions might not be made, at least the impacts of the options will be understood.
Any further questions, comments on the Treasury update? No, appears not. So we do have a recommendation. So just there on page 77. So that's recommendation B, that the committee notes the Bancorp Treasury reporting dashboard for the December 2025 quarter. I'll move that. If I could have a seconder. Seconded by Councillor Nola. All in favour? Any against? Fantastic. All right, we shall then move on to 5.6, which is our continuous improvement and audit actions monitoring report. My favourite topic of audit recommendations and the value for money they bring. Over to you for to introduce the report.
Through you, the Chair, present this paper. Because of the new term, I did take the liberty of archiving some of the previous recommendations that have been worked through and completed and have been considered, so that unfortunately means you don't see the significant journey of improvement that the finance team and council have been through to achieve the report. Well, I think with eight recommendations in this last audit is quite an achievement, and they are all medium, one low, two carried forward, which seem to be more of a matter of interpretation between audit and the council, but still this is a significant journey we've been on. So is there any questions?
Before I open it up, I think what the report tells us is there's clear plan and clear target for closure of those recommendations. So we should take some assurance that they're under control and that as things are addressed, that's reported through to this committee, and once that's completed, it then drops off the report and we don't see it again. Any comments or questions on the action monitor? I know it's Member Jenny, it's one of your favourite topics. Anything from you?
Thank you. I think actually there is some good news in terms of the audit report, that they have trimmed it back and given us a more sensible report. Before it was going into so much detail that it was, we did question the value in that. I just wanted to talk to a couple of the new items. The page 100 and 102 around the IT elements, and it's a bit frustrating to see that audit's got one opinion and officers have got a different opinion. I did note that this is a draft report, and so I assume that that's going to be tidied up. But in the context of cybersecurity risks and so on, these issues that are raised around passwords and so on, it'd be good to get the facts right in this and to tidy up that. There is a deep dive coming on cybersecurity, so maybe it can be washed into there, that we get the correct view. Maybe when this report's finalised, that there's obviously some conversations that need to happen with Audit New Zealand to agree what the position is and not be having two conflicting things. We're reliant on that independent advice from external audit, and we've got to believe what they're saying. So there's a bit more work to do in that space. Maybe it could be circulated once it's finalised separately.
Thank you, Member Jenny. I'm going to invite Nikki Brady, our IT guru, to perhaps make comment on this, and then and whether you want to follow up with anything further or whether you want to talk about it now.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think probably this is equally as frustrating in terms of reading that language when I first viewed this report. I think the challenge here is that the IT audit is undertaken at the same time every year. It typically is at the end of June through to July. My gut feeling is that us proposing a plan that shows what we're going to implement at that time of the audit, if it's not implemented in full, the view is that it's not implemented. So despite the fact that we provide a plan and it shows what we're going to undertake in a sequence, like you'll see if you go to page 101, where it talked about, or actually 101, it talked about the elevated network accounts, for example. At the 17th of November, we completed the formal change we advised in the plan we would complete, but because at July when they're here, that's not done, their view is it's not actioned. So when I responded to this, when the draft came through, I had challenged, you knew the plan, we provided the plan, so commenting that no action has been taken, I was frustrated about. But obviously there has been no change to that wording at my request, so it would have to be a matter of us to follow up with audit as to whether they're willing to do that. But I do understand their timing, and that's probably just a tension of between us and them.
So, open question then from me would be, what can this committee do to support or address that, or do we just leave it in your capable management hands?
The advice I suppose I want to offer is, let's put it in the context of our top risks, and does it matter right now? Because arguing about this stuff with audit actually, frankly, just costs us money and time, and there are other things that matter more to our top risks that we're worth investing our energy and time in. I think as a committee, you need assurance that we are adequately putting systems and controls in place to manage, network and application concerns. There's some interpretation and timing and transition difference between us and audit. I think if this time next year, the next audit report didn't acknowledge the huge amount of work that's happened in the last 18 months, then we're kind of having different conversations with audit. But I do think we've got to put this in the context of our relationship with audit and the role that audit plays in helping give council and community assurances about performance.
Yeah, that's very good point. Any further comments, questions, anything? Councillor Noel?
Well, this was left further later on through the chair to Ms Davidson, and the same I would gather from the really good explanation around the GST issue, which is obviously an ongoing one. I really appreciated the explanation because it actually then sort of made sense rather than just the wording that it's non-compliant.
It's pretty easy to spot the finance geeks around the table, isn't it? No, I appreciate the question, Councillor Nola. Did you want to comment on that one? Or no? Okay. All right. No final comments, questions. We're making very good progress. I've got a resolution. Thank you, Alice. Keeping me on track. All right. So page 87 of the agenda. So we just need to move that that completed actions are removed from the future report. If I could move that, and second by Councillor Nola. All in favour? Any against? No. Fantastic. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Jacinta, for your support. We shall then move to item 5.7, which is our Risk and Assurance Committee work program, and Monique, I think you're leading that one. There's been obviously a few things that have been discussed today, and we'll focus in on those in a second, but did you want to just lead off with any sort of opening comments?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. No, look, I think additional comments today and suggestions that I think will reflect into the work program. I think the feedback we'd like to hear from the committee is, does this look and feel about right? If you wanted to give us a steer on the deep dives, then that would be really helpful. It feels like the financial sustainability piece is something that we should give attention to and maybe put more prominent in the work program. And the other two things I would flag is I think what's not in the work program, well, it's reflected at a high level in the other areas to focus on, but I think there's an opportunity to be more specific about in Central District's water transition and then the shaping of the financial strategy. So I'm referring to the bottom of the page of the work program there. How can we usefully use the Risk and Assurance Committee to provide that additional level of additional layer of guidance and sense checking as we take council through those important processes.
Thank you, Monique. Yes, so I might just lead off on this one because obviously I've had conversations with the team. This does feel quite right from my perspective. I think definitely some deep dive focus in on finance and waters would be useful. The other thing that I've flagged to the team and through Monique is and I understand that this is work that's already happening within the organisation, but some focus on, and I'll frame it as like antenno in our reporting of where public report issues or issues, and just having assurance that anything that is quite critical is making sure that there is clear escalation and action of that, and that there are systems to manage any high risk type reports that are coming into council. And so I don't know if you want to speak to kind of what's happening around that at the moment.
So similar to the item that the committee will consider in the public excluded agenda shortly, we're taking although the context is quite different, we're taking a similar kind of lessons learned approach and preparing for the next risk and assurance agenda some learnings and anticipated risk in relation to the learnings around what's happened up in Mount Maunganui and Western Bay of Plenty more recently, for us to consider what is the residual risk to council, but where are our pressure points and how can we give the committee assurance that we've thought about that stuff. And some of that is about process in relation to things like if someone calls council, how do we know it's going to get to the right place? But some of it's also about understanding like what do we know about our assets or particular pieces of land that we might have a responsibility or a liability to, and how we're actively managing that in a way that limits impact on people.
Thank you for that much more articulate explanation of the area of focus. I'm going to open it up now to the table for thoughts, feedback on the what's in front of you, but also what you've heard today in terms of kind of adding to that focus. Councillor Nola, I think you had something you wanted to raise.
I did, thank you. Bearing in mind it's public excluded, but I would like to see the asset management policy work added to the work plan.
Are you able to just talk to what you're looking for in terms of focus from this committee, and then perhaps we'll invite Monique or others to sort of respond to that and let you know what might be happening already, what's in place, what's happening already.
Because it's public excluded, I wasn't sure how easy I could. The fact is I just felt that it's an area of risk, therefore it should be on our reporting that the policy is progressing and things like that. That's where I was coming from.
CEO Monique, did you want to talk to that?
No, we can keep the committee updated on the progress of that work. It's obviously going to be a key element as we lead into the long-term plan as well. I think it'll be good to get clarity about what's the role of Risk and Assurance Committee in that piece of policy versus the role of council, but that's something we can clarify in time.
So I'll take that one offline. And we can just understand also what we're reporting. We're going to get through the organisational performance report, and therefore what additional or extra information we might need through this committee. Can I get people's feedback, thoughts, comments, questions on the workbook program? Remember, Jenny.
Feedback, I really like what's in the program. I think it's appropriate, and I support the sort of deep dive areas that you mentioned: financial sustainability, water services. Yeah, I think it sounds about right. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Sarah.
I think it looks good. I just wonder whether or not there needed to be a risk focus, perhaps. And I know it's included in legislative compliance, but there's changes going on in terms of the way local government operates. Is there anything that's going to impact? And I'm sure there is, but from a risk perspective for long-term plans.
Yeah, that's very helpful. I'm seeing Monique nodding to that and agree with that. Anything further? No. All right. Do we have a resolution around this one, Alice? We do. So we'll go to page 121 of the agenda. So that's recommendation B. So I'll move that the Risk and Assurance Committee supports the proposed Risk and Assurance Committee work program for the next 12 months, subject to the changes discussed by the committee today. I'll move that. Seconded by Mayor Burney. All in favour? Any against? Fantastic. So that brings us to the end of our open meeting agenda. We are now going to go into public excluded to deal with item C1, Risk Assurance Review Development to Asset. So where's my motion there? I'll move that we go into public excluded in accordance with section 48(1)(a) of the Local Government Official Information and Meetings Act 1987. So I'll move that, if I could have a seconder for that. Seconded by Councillor Nola. All in favour? Any against? No. We're going to take a 2-minute break. For those elected members in the room, you are more than welcome to stay for the public excluded item. And for our members of the public that have joined us, thank you for your attendance. Hopefully you found it interesting. But we will now go into public excluded, so we'll have to say goodbye to you. Thank you.